So this time I wanted to show something a little bit different. Rather than going through a whole league, I wanted to just show a couple highlights, and specifically I wanted to focus on one card today, and that card is Satoru the Infiltrator out of the Ninja stack. Satoru is a card that has been around for a little while. It came out in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and I kind of didn't put this card through its paces. On the surface, this card just didn't look very good to me. But lately, I've seen a number of 5.0s from Ninjas, and they've all had Satoru. It was featured on Bosch and Roll, it's featured on James Kazao's channel. And, Satoru kind of has some pluses and minuses. He doesn't draw cards on his own, but does draw cards in combination with stuff like Ornithopter, um, or putting in any of these ninjas, including Kaito Bane of Nightmares. So even though this is a Planeswalker, when you put it in, it does trigger Satoru the Infiltrator. Satoru the Infiltrator specifically triggers whenever one or more non-token creatures enter if they were not cast or if no mana was spent to cast them. They have to be non-token. So it doesn't trigger on an Orcish Bowmaster token, but an Ornithopter will trigger it, or putting in a ninja through ninjutsu will trigger it. It can trigger in a couple other weird situations like show and tell or something like that, but those are basically the two things. And when it does this, it draws a card. Now, this kind of results in some interesting gameplay because it gives you an outlet to additional Ornithopters, which is something the deck wants since it's not generally running Retrofitter Foundry anymore. So without Retrofitter Foundry, which was a good way to convert excess Ornithopters into 4/4s, um, this one can at least turn excess Ornithopters into a card draw. And likewise, if you have Satoru and an Ornithopter or something like this, and you attack and you ninjutsu in Yuriko or Ingenious Infiltrator or something like that, even if your ninja gets killed, you're still going to draw a card when the ninjutsu trigger resolves. So that's at least something. Um, yeah, and it has appeared on the surface to be kind of a win more card, but I wanted to actually put it through its paces. And, to be honest, it impressed me a little bit more than I thought it would. I'm just going to show a couple gameplay highlights from a league. These are going to be replays rather than a full league. All right, it's match two, game one. So this is an unknown opponent, and I lost the die roll and I was on the draw. But this is a game where Satoru really popped off, and I really wanted to show this one. I didn't draw Satoru at all in match one. It was against Show and Tell. I was able to win that match. But this is a matchup against Eldrazi, although it's an unknown opponent. I'm showing a replay. And we'll kind of see what Satoru does. So this hand is a clear mulligan. I mulligan this hand, and this hand looks much better. It has Satoru, it has Ornithopter. I'm going to put back the second Satoru here and keep this hand. So my opponent opens on Yavimaya. So already I have kind of an interesting choice with Satoru. I can hold my Ornithopter or play Ornithopter on turn one. The line I've been taking against unknown opponents is to just play out the Ornithopter. This kind of forces the action a little bit. The opponent might use a removal spell on the Ornithopter, which is fine. I would rather they use the removal on the Ornithopter than use it on Satoru or Ingenious Infiltrator. The other thing is that if they tap out on their turn, you can attack with Ornithopter, put in Ingenious Infiltrator. So generally the line I've been taking is just play out the Ornithopter on turn one, and you might still get value with Satoru later, but don't try to hold the Ornithopter for value. Ninjas tries to get ahead right away, so try to do that. So I play out the Ornithopter, play out the Prismatic Vista, and pass the turn. And the opponent really punishes me here with a Wastegate Battle Mage exiling my Ornithopter. Ouch. So this tells me, hey, this is an Eldrazi matchup. The Yavimaya could have been a couple things, but now it's for sure. And my Ornithopter is going to go away for no benefit. So this is kind of sad. So here I draw a second Ornithopter, which at least gives me some value. So already here, compared with, say, if the Satoru was a Yuriko or was another Ingenious Infiltrator, it's going to draw a card right away here. And as a 2/3, it's going to blank the Wastegate Battle Mage. So already this is a card that I would not have drawn, or rather, the card that I'm going to draw off this Ornithopter is a card I would not have drawn if this was some other ninja. So here I I play out the Satoru and cast the Ornithopter and draw a card. And again, the Eldrazi deck kind of does Eldrazi things here, and this is going to hurt. Here's sowing Mycospawn, exiling my island, grabbing a wasteland, and then destroying my underground sea. Thrilling. So this is kind of sad, but at least the opponent can't attack. And then they play a Chalice on one just to add insult to injury. So here I have two creatures, but pretty much nothing else going on. I think I draw Yuriko, and I just play the Soporific Springs tapped. An opponent plays a Glaring Fleshraker, but has no follow-up. They only have one card in hand. So here they're kind of stuck. They did attack with the Sowing Mycospawn. Clearly, I'm not blocking. But here, Satoru is blanking these two things, which is something that wouldn't have happened under normal conditions. So already that's okay. I draw another Ornithopter, so this is card number 2 that Satoru's drawn in this matchup. I draw my second land, but it's a tap land, so I surveil and just pass the turn. I can't remember what I surveilled there, but anyway, doesn't really matter too much. So here, opponent, again, doesn't have any good attacks other than the Sowing Mycospawn, which is fine if they want to get in with that. If they get in with that, that's totally fine. I'll just take 3. I'm definitely not blocking with one of the Ornithopters. Not yet, at least. So here they Boseiju my tap land, which is an interesting play. I would say holding the Boseiju or Boseijuing the Ornithopter is better because, they must know that Ninjas is a deck that has a lot of basics. So anyway, and even Boseiju can get any land. So I could have gotten, I guess, another Underground Sea if I had another one, but there's no way they're taking me off lands there. So that play, I would say, was somewhat questionable. So I draw the island, and here, so Satoru's already drawn 2 cards. So here I attack with Satoru and Ornithopter. And I'm willing to trade the Satoru for either Glaring Fleshraker or Wastegate, or rather, if they want to double block, because they can't block with one, because Satoru's got Menace, I'm willing to trade Satoru for the Glaring Fleshraker. That was my thought process. So they take the double block. I put in Yuriko. Oh, I put in Ingenious Infiltrator, rather. I know I put in the Ingenious Infiltrator because the Ingenious Infiltrator can, in a pinch, hold the ground and, kill one of these in blocking if I the following turn. So here I trade the Satoru away, but I get the 3rd card off of Satoru with Ingenious Infiltrator, plus the card that Ingenious Infiltrator is going to draw. So Satoru's already drawn me 3 extra cards, and then he trades with the Glaring Fleshraker. Can't really ask for too much more than that. I played the island, and I think I played out the Ornithopter. I could have... there's no point to playing out the Polluted Delta and holding a Fatal Push because of the Chalice on 1. So these 2 cards are just totally dead in my hand, currently. So here, my opponent just hits an Ancient Tomb, and then they hold back because they're thinking, well, gotta hold back against the Ingenious Infiltrator, because if I attack with the Ingenious Infiltrator, if my opponent had attacked with the Sowing Mycospawn, the Wastegate Battle Mage is kind of priced into blocking. The other option, they could have got in for 5 and taken me to 8, but I don't know if that's a great option either. So they hold back both creatures. Here, I draw another Satoru, and we kind of see again. So Satoru's already drawn 3 cards. I play another Satoru, so I'm only running 2 Satorus. Kind of fortunate to draw both of them. Attack with Ornithopter. So here I get another, I get in with Yuriko. Again, my opponent could have something, or they have no cards in hand, but I've been pretty fortunate that they haven't drawn Kozilek's Command, because that card would really kind of open up this game. But my opponent sees the writing on the wall here. I'm going to get a card from Yuriko. I'm going to get first of all, I'm going to get a trigger from Satoru for putting in Yuriko. Then I'm going to get 2 triggers, one for Yuriko and one for Ingenious Infiltrator for connecting with a ninja. And then I'm going to get a 4th card this turn from casting the Ornithopter. So this Satoru was worth or rather the 2 Satorus together were worth 5 cards this game. So, and if either of Satoru's, but especially this first one, if this was just an Ingenious Infiltrator or a Yuriko, it wouldn't have been nearly as good. So we really saw how Satoru was much, much, much better than kind of some alternatives there. So kind of really highlighted the power of this card. So this is the other match I wanted to highlight where Satoru kind of had a good showing. This is match 3, so right after the Eldrazi matchup. Game 1, unknown opponent, and I'm on the draw. So I get another mulligan hand. This is a clear mulligan. There's no lands. Ninjas does not function on no lands. This hand is much better. It has Satoru, Ingenious Infiltrator, Tameo, and 2 cantrips. Pretty sure I decided to put back one of the cantrips and keep it. All right, I put back the Ponder. An opponent opens with Mountain into Ghost Vacuum. So at this point, I'm thinking Painter. Um, Yeah, and that's an okay matchup for ninjas. So on this turn, I'm just going to open with the Tameo and pass the turn. So opponent opens with second mountain here, and this is kind of a curious situation because if they had a bolt or a pyroblast, they probably want to kill the Tameo on their own turn before they give me a chance to untap and cast a brainstorm, for example, which would flip the Tameo and blank the pyroblast or bolt. So, you know, there aren't a lot of decks that run 2 mountains. Painter is probably the most likely answer here. It ends up not being Painter, but yeah. So I have kind of a choice here. I can put in the Ingenious Infiltrator, but if they have a Bolt or a Pyroblast, which admittedly they probably would have cast on their own turn, but if they have it, this sets me back a lot, right? The Tameo comes back to my hand, so I lose the mana for Tameo. And then I'm going to lose 2 mana for putting in the Ingenious Infiltrator, and then the Ingenious Infiltrator is going to get no value. So I decide to respect my opponent here and put in the Satoru, just kind of assuming that they are a thinking player. I try to bait out something with an attack. Maybe they'll Pyroblast before they give me the trigger. They don't. So at this point, I could put in the Ingenious Infiltrator, but I choose to do nothing as well and just cast the Satoru. And at this point, like the Satoru kind of gives me like insurance here because then I can attack, put in the Ingenious Infiltrator, and then I'm going to draw a card from the Satoru and then draw 2 cards potentially from the Ingenious Infiltrator connecting and the Satoru connecting. So this kind of forces them have something or you're going to, fall pretty far behind. So that was kind of the decision making that I went with. When I saw the island, I was very confused because this is now all of a sudden not Painter, right? So I had kind of no idea what this was. Again, could have a red blast, could have a bolt. And here I decide to just, it's time to draw cards. Like if they have a bolt and a red blast or, two removal spells, they got me, right? They can kill the Satoru before the Ingenious Infiltrator hits the battlefield, and then kill the Ingenious Infiltrator before it connects. And then I'm going to be hurting. So here I draw the first card off Satoru. So here it's turn 3. I draw 1 card off Satoru, um, and then debatably draw 1 more card off Satoru here by connecting with the Genius Infiltrator and the Satoru. So that again, Satoru's a ninja, draws an extra card. So here the Satoru's kind of been worth 2 cards. Probably the Ingenious Infiltrator would have connected the previous turn and it would have been worth an extra card. So maybe it's about even on cards here. But the Satoru um, still doing pretty good work here and being a lot more cautious, being a little bit more safe compared to putting in the Ingenious Infiltrator on turn 2. Here I draw the Ornithopter, which is great because this is going to give me a 3rd card essentially off of Satoru. So here I play the Ornithopter and draw another card off of Satoru. And here I have kind of a choice. I can play the Undercity Sewers and just basically play a tap land. If I hadn't seen the island, I'd probably just play Swamp and represent Fatal Push, even though I don't have one, because you're worried about Painter like trying to win in 1 turn, right? So um, here I end up playing the tap land. So yeah, and then I just bin the Ingenious Infiltrator, which gets eaten by the Ghost Vacuum. So here, opponent They play Thunder Trap Trainer, kind of an interesting card. I actually like this card. Gives you a Narset trigger when it enters the battlefield, but notably it is a wizard. So this is all of a sudden this is blue red wizards, a deck near and dear to my heart. I love playing this deck. And they're hoping to basically cast Flame of Anor, a 3 mana spell, 1 red, 1 blue, and a colorless. It's typically a 3 for 1. It draws 2 cards and kind of destroys one of my permanents. On top of the Thunder Trap Trainer kind of replacing itself here. So, um, but they're just a turn slow here essentially. So here's a brainstorm. They brainstorm, um, but at this point it kind of doesn't matter. I'm just going to basically force them to have it here. I have another Ingenious Infiltrator to put in, um, which is going to draw like a million D cards essentially, right? Another card off of the Satoru, off the Ingenious Infiltrator entering from the Satoru. I'll get another card off of the Ornithopter, and then 3 ninjas connecting with 2 Ingenious Infiltrator triggers. So that's like 10 cards or 9 cards or something this turn. My opponent's just buried. They scoop it up. They see the writing on the wall. You could argue that Satoru didn't do a lot here, but I actually think Satoru proved his value in this game, even though this game ended up being kind of a rout anyway. Um, like Satoru was a much safer play on turn 2, in my opinion, than just going for it and having a ninja. I didn't have a daze if they have some response. I didn't have any way to protect it from a bolt or a red blast. So I actually think the Satoru was a safer play and didn't like even though it was a safer play, it didn't really result in less value over the course of the game. So, you know, I actually think Satoru here was a good play because it developed my board instead of replacing a creature on my board. Anyway, these are the two games that I really wanted to highlight from this league. These were the two where Satoru really made a difference or actually did something. There were a couple of situations where Satoru, like, just you play him on turn 2, he gets bolted or fatal push or something, and that was it. The league ended in a 4-1 with a very tight loss to depths. It was very sad. Almost a 5-0 was my final matchup. Uh, but there were no situations actually in the league where I was like, oh, I really wish this Satoru was an Ingenious Infiltrator or a uh, Yuriko or something like that. So it's possible that the 8 payoff ninjas is just enough combined with Satoru being kind of an alternative way to get value even when you can't connect. So it kind of gives you value, like in some ways, kind of similar to what Tamio does, where Tamio generates value without connecting. Satoru can kind of generate value even if you don't connect, or even if you ninjutsu something and then that thing you still gets bolted, you still draw a card off the Satoru. So it kind of gives you an alternate way to just be less. It's a little safer, and that's really the two things that I wanted to highlight about Satoru. I think it's a good card. I think as a two of, I think it is a very defensible. It's very defensible to play two of these. They've proven their worth, and I hope to see what other people can do with it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this like kind of alternative to a full league. It's a shorter video, but I just kind of highlighted some key decision points and some key situations specifically around this card. So hopefully you enjoyed this and tune in next time. All right. Have a good rest of your day and keep sneaking in those ninjas.